are perhaps seen as one of the best parts of Rio Plus 20, I've heard nothing. There was a lot of, I need to research it more, but at the time there was a bit of a difference of opinion between the host country and the Secretariat with regard to these days. And because of that they took place in parallel, there was no way that they could really have an impact on the official outcome document from Rio Plus 20, but I think they had an impact on the level of dialogue. Whether these will have an impact on the SDGs, I have no clue, which feeds into Peter's comment. Who knows? That's as much as I can say right now. You know, in terms of looking at the different ways to try to get everybody to have input into this. But is this going to end up being an intergovernmental process? Is it going to be like what the MDGs with the Secretary General coming out and saying, here they are, take them or leave them? We don't know yet. And how they're all going to come together, how many are they going to be? You know, I have no answer.
Yes. Well, Corinne, that's a tricky question. I mean, a lot of people are in the midst of trying to explore what that sort of phrasing would look like. I mean, just to put this in context just very briefly, I think planetary boundaries is just the first test of the political conflicts that Earth system science will create. I mean, it's going to be, we will see similar approaches in the future, and these will have similar political electricity, I guess. So I think this is a good case to start with. I mean, and how would you rephrase it? I mean, I think you need to acknowledge two things. One, this is one approach to operationalize our system science. There are others, and there will be others. Two, there will always be uncertainty. So, I mean, the best thing that we can do, I guess, and that's my personal reflection, I probably will argue against my boss here, that we should settle for some sort of Earth system precautionary principle without specifying particular measurable global targets. I mean, that's not going to be politically sensible, but I mean, there needs to be some sort of international acknowledgement that science tells us that there are potentially global tipping points. I mean, we need to get to that first step before we move into the measurable targets and policy interventions, etc. I mean, but that's my personal opinion on it.
Thank you. And at this point, probably we need more interaction with policymakers.
Yes.
Florence.
Three remarks on the different questions. One, I would like to comment on this Sustainable Development Days. Of course, I think it was a very, very good idea, and it went very well. I was involved in chairing one of the dialogue, and it reveals that societies were not that different between them compared to the differences that governments were trying to push them to see. So it's useful. Of course, not for Rio Plus 20 as such, because it was too late. But just imagine, and I think maybe that can be incorporated now in the preparation for the SDGs. If we have that beforehand, months beforehand, the conclusion of the discussion, I think the idea that the government representing well-integrated vision of their own interests would have changed. To understand and to see that the Brazilian, the Chinese, the French, and people in the US doesn't have so different view on what is green growth, what is sustainability, what would be difference, but not that huge. And that commonality, I think that my feeling after Rio, that it is a very strong addition to the global governance system. So I would definitely urge for developing this type of dialogue, having them really publicized, and I think the innovation that has really come from Rio Plus 20. And on your second question, how the developing countries would be involved. Again, what struck me at Rio was the SG decided for this high-level panel, and the immediate reaction of the parties was, we don't want this panel to dictate us. We want our own group to discuss and to negotiate. And that's why this group of 30 people, which is much more than 30 people, if I understand well, will begin to function, is beginning to now work. Means that in this group you will have developed countries to negotiate with as well as developing. I think that Pam, you may correctly, it's sort of a duo, so one seat is shared by several, most. Yeah. So you will have this mixing of people. And I think like in every country, the countries should be able to deliver what they want, what their society has discussed. So I think it will be difficult because imagine launching a global discussion on US on sustainable development goals, how much you want to reduce poverty, how much you want to do sustainable agriculture. I think that would be really interesting, but they would have to. They would have to do the job, and not only just to negotiate the balancing between US and China. I think, again, and that could be through these dialogues. On this planet boundaries refrain, which I think is a very interesting idea, again, if I take climate change, if you think about a discussion on